Yeah, I'm just gonna make some adjustments to my.
And we lost you, Iliya.
Yes, but we're gonna have a good time, I think. If you're monitoring that class I'm doing, which I hope you are.
I am indeed.
But yeah, I think I've been fine. Just doing a lot of shit like everybody else,
Right.
and trying to still exist, still be a human being amidst it all. It's
Sure.
But yeah, other than that. Yeah, it's all good, but I mean the amount of action happening on like the anime Discord is.
Sure.
This is why, in part, I have it turned off on my other computer, because I'm like, I don't get anything accomplished if I just have it like constantly. I'm like, oh, I gotta check that out.
There's a lot
It does
happening.
enjoy the lounge music. I did turn it on. Yeah, a lot. Like there's like a million classes, and they're all awesome.
That's true. There's new content coming out, the new website, new features happening, the new 3D models, and then of course just the non-stop events. Like there's an anatomy workshop happening in November in New Mexico, I believe, and then like right now half of New Masters Academy seems to be in Florence at an 11th century villa in Tuscany.
Yeah, Joshua keeps making me extremely jealous with all those cool Italian landscapes and interiors and hanging out and sketching. It's always great.
Right.
One day we'll all join, and they won't know what to do with us.
Exactly. Yeah. They can only handle so many of us at a time.
I know. I think but it's true. Yeah. So that's very cool.
Well, we're at about time here, so I may as well start this officially. So yeah, I see there's lots of comments already. But yeah, hi everyone. My name is Peter, and I am joined here by our wonderful artist and instructor, Iliya Mirochnik. And we're here today because we're talking about a new live class that Iliya is running, and it is called Drawing from Memory and Imagination. And that's super cool because we've been running live classes. I think Iliya was the second or third live class we ever ran at New Masters Academy. And this will be the first live class back for, I think, nearly 2 years. So that is super exciting.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been that long? It has probably been that long. My God. Yes, but I'm glad to be back though. It's gonna be exciting. I think this is a great topic, and one that I feel is not maybe covered enough. So I thought I'd give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like this isn't something that has really been covered too much in live classes. So I do have a bunch of questions here for you.
Yes.
So I guess just to kick it off, so what is this class? What is the primary goal of drawing from memory and imagination?
I mean, I would like to say that the goal of it, right, the end goal is to be able to just much more clearly express ideas you have in your head. And that's a part of it, right? Like, I mean, the the magical end goal, which is probably to do to do everything from your head without relying on anything, on any imagery. I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily possible for everyone to achieve, because all of us respond to the world around us in a different way. Like I feel at a certain point, even if I start by sketching from imagination, like I like to rely at least to a degree on something in front of me, right? Because it takes me out of my own, tendencies and ideas. However, all work you do is partially from imagination or memory, right? Like that's the goal, right? Like there is, of course, a whole school of thought about being as precise and accurate, but if you're doing even any kind of remote, like even like just slight exaggeration or emphasis, right? That's already you adding that. And I think this class will help with that, right? Like it'll teach you to, I think, be able to step away or just kind of turn off seeing what's in front of you for at least a while or a moment at a time to sort of reevaluate what you're trying to put on the page.
Right. So you're kind of already going into this now, because I was going to ask, like, can you discuss sort of the significance of learning to draw from memory and imagination? Like, why would it be important for different kinds of artists, maybe not even artists who just want to draw purely imaginative drawings from their head completely, but how could this be useful for different kinds of artists as well?
I think I mean, I think there is this idea of like the kind of a pure concept artist who can just extract any cool imagery straight out of their head, and those exist. However, the thing that I was talking about is that we all should probably rely a little bit more on memory and imagination, because it makes you more flexible. It gives you a chance to just explore ideas on your own, right? Like you just can. It becomes easier to simply take a piece of paper and put something on it and have an idea of where to take this, right? Like even just like you want to create some image where you will rely quite heavily on other imagery or art or like just anything else. But you still, I find it much more helpful to at least begin something like that from imagination and allow something to happen that is really kind of a truly your own. And once that happens, then you can introduce all these other elements. And the other way is also good, right? Where like at times you just don't know, like there is a point where like accuracy, simply to be accurate, is just not enough, or not where something needs to go. So that's another reason to rely on your own sort of imagination and experience. The thing that I also want to say is that it's also a great, like it's something to just keep practicing in your education, right? Because it makes it very clear what you know and what you don't. Anatomy is a great example of this, right? Like if you kind of can't sketch things from your head when you're looking at a model, at least to a certain degree, you probably aren't like 100% on that, which is okay, but that will point out to you that like, oh, maybe I should go back and explore that a little bit more.
Right, so, yeah. Right. So just purely seeing and then copying isn't necessarily understanding, and maybe drawing from imagination will spark a kind of process of needing to analyze and understand in order to then translate what you're seeing in a more truthful way, or a way that shows that you understand things, perhaps.
That you've abstracted it, right? That like you've analyzed it and abstracted it in like in your own like on your own terms. am not really reading the chat, but some people are saying they can't hear you, Peter, but I think other people can. So I don't know what that's about. I'm just saying. It pops up in a little corner.
Right, I can see that. Can you guys hear me okay in the chat? Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, but it just like it popped up a couple of times, and I was like, "Oh my god, what's happening?"
Right.
But,
yeah.
yes.
Computers,
Cool.
Iliya.
Yeah, I know they're the worst, but they're also awesome because they, here we are.
We love him, we hate him. So
Yep.
can you discuss the process of going from drawing from observation to drawing from memory to drawing from imagination? Because as I understand it, this class kind of takes you through a bit of a journey, and we're not diving straight into the deep end, but there's kind of a transition that happens. Can you talk us through what that would look like?
Of course, in a way, though. I mean, like I kind of constructed this class like my other ones, right? Like this was not necessarily something that I was taught in the way that I'm presenting it, but it's something that I've taken from my education and my experience. And I think the thing that working from imagination can be frightening, right? Like I think it becomes,
right,
especially if you're on a more traditional path, just observing and all of that. But and of course, going back to like the academy, this whole like idea of constructive anatomy is essentially a part of this, right? Like it is like you are like adding into the image that you have on your paper a bunch of other elements that you have memorized, explored, and practiced. So you're not really copying, right? Like, and that at a certain point it combines, and you're not entirely sure what you're really observing or what you just sort of like add into the images now because of habit, right? Like because like you're just aware of something that has to happen. Well, let's say like, on a knee, you're not sure if you see that knee more accurately, or you just like are accustomed to having a knee sort of in your mind. So I think the way that I've approached this is to, and it will I think it'll be, I do think it'll be a great class, and like all and the only time I think something's going to be a good class if there's a lot for me that I get out of it as well, in terms of just like, which is a little bit on the sort of, it's a tiny bit obnoxious, but like at the same time, like if I feel like, oh, I need to clarify some kind of concept for my own artistic practice, that at that point the teaching is real. Like it's not just me like repeating the same thing I've done 100 times, but like we're going to be exploring that together, which is a little cliche, but that is how it works, I think.
Well, that's very interesting. Yeah. Oh, no, please continue.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's just really interesting that you're talking about clarifying things for yourself as well. Was drawing from imagination, or maybe this process, this way that you're going to approach it in this class, is that something that you have always done? Like, was that part of your education path as well? Or was there a certain point where you maybe realized that you wanted to bring more this kind of imaginative process into your work?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a part of the practice of learning anatomy. There were the anatomical casts, all of that. You copy them. I mean, that was the exam. The exam at the end of the year, it was to catch one of the casts or a bone of the skull from imagination. And all of the work that was done for imagination at that time, I'll speak for myself alone, was pretty bad. But like, so our teachers would just like look at it and like, okay, we'll ask you more questions to get you to pass this test. But like that as a concept is always there, right? Like in order to really be aware that you've analyzed the thing, interpreted it, and internalized it, then you probably can draw this from imagination. And so, yeah, and also just, the times we need to adjust something in a painting, most of the time you start that off by just eyeballing it from your head, and then you get a model and and alter things if you need to. So in that regard, that was part of the education. How we composed as well, right? Like I touched upon that a little bit, but more importantly is of late, where now I work in sort of like the games industry, and some of the stuff that I have to sketch often rather quickly, I don't often rely on, like I found myself doing this more often, and that's actually when this idea of doing a class came up, when I realized that when I was asked if I wanted to teach another class, and this was already a while ago, when I thought about it, this was something that I was doing a lot more of than I had in my previous artistic practice. And so I was like, well, I think I've done it enough that I can probably explain it, but in doing so, explain it and sort of like get to the core of it for my own self.
That's very interesting. So, like working in the games industry, do you feel like that gave you perhaps a new perspective on when to apply this kind of thing?
I think I'm not entirely sure this would apply. I mean, like, right? It would depend on the art style of the game. It would depend on. I think when you need to sketch an idea very quickly, that this is very helpful. And there were a few images I took like to a point of, I would say, it was kind of a more polished piece. It doesn't look like, I haven't ever, there hasn't been a moment, like a time where I completed something from imagination that looked as though I did it from life, right? And I think that's also important, right? Like that's probably not going to happen, right? Because you can't get all of the information in front of you. You can't remember it, right? And you also, here's the part where we get to like, where we get to practicing working, like the differences between the imagination and the memory. And so, yes, so the course will begin with essentially with the memory assignments. I don't know if you heard all that, Peter. Yeah, so like, and we'll start really as like with the most basic assignments I could come up with, where we sketch essentially a tiny little abstraction and then we repeat it. And then we're going to do this a lot and gradually make it more complex. Until we then start to see that probably working from imagination is not so much like there is a core of information that you need to have, right? And that's the part that you practice and observe and sketch and repeat from what you've seen. And then at a certain point, it makes it easier to just sort of combine these different bits and pieces to create what seems like something completely new, where in fact it's probably a composite from stuff you've seen and observed.
Right. That's very interesting. So how will critiques be handled in a class like this, especially when some of the work will not be done from imagination? So will there be a difference in how work from observation is critiqued compared to work from imagination or from memory?
I'm not so sure. I don't think so. I think it'll be critiqued exactly the same way. In some ways, it'll be easier because I have, a few things that we're going to do is, let's say, hold on. I wrote this a tiny bit ago, and I want to make sure that I have this. Yes. So, like as an example, sketching a portrait, then removing it, and then repeating the sketch. Right? Like, there's also the thing here that we're going to practice. There's one way is to just observe for a while, then turn everything off and sketch what you recall. And the other way is to actually observe and sketch as you would anyway, from something, from an image or a model or whatnot, and then to repeat this. Since then you're not like, there's also like, you will recall how like you moved your, like what lines you yourself have already put on the, so you're not trying to replicate what's in front of you, you're just trying to repeat what already happened, right? And so that is, I lost the question a tiny bit, but I think that, but that at least, yeah. So in terms of the critiques, right? Like, if we're just doing a copy of a copy, then you just critique the copy as you would anything else. I don't think that is, so there are times when the critiques will not have, like, where there will be almost like, it's the kind of like the classic assignment I used to give my class, where it was, you know, go outside and sketch for a certain amount of time. And it came from an assignment from some teachers of mine who told me that they had that assignment in school, where they would just sketch, and at the end of the week they would come with all these sketches to an instructor, and he would just count them and hand them back. Right? Like, like there's no, at a certain point you just need to make sure that people are practicing and they're practicing the correct thing, but actually what's happening on that page is not as important at that point in time. So there's going to be a combination of these assignments as well, right? Like, because not everything needs a critique. But we're going to have plenty of critiques. This is not what I'm not saying this as to like, but I think what this class will also offer is a lot of small exercises that you can practice on your own time, and not only using the images that I'll provide or any of that stuff, but you can practice this anytime, anywhere. And in a way, I have whole sketchbooks, or rather, I have. They're not even sketchbooks. They are notebooks that I would take with me to other classes, non-art related classes, where I would just sketch, and like in skulls, like all around that page from imagination. So this is just something you'll be able to do all the time, and you don't have to always. Right? Like there's something here that happens when you're just like practicing from what you recall, or just repeating something that you've already done, because you don't need anything for that. You just need a sketchbook. You don't even need anything in front of you, right? This can happen anywhere, anytime, which is a great way to just keep practicing in that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That was actually, I had a question that was going to lead on from that, which was, were there any specific techniques or practices that you recommend for improving our ability to draw from imagination outside of just those class hours? And that's kind of interesting. You were saying you always carry around like a notebook.
Yeah, I mean, I carry around loose leaf paper, which is like a personal thing of mine. Because then I don't. If anybody is intimidated by sketchbook or anything, I recommend I probably mentioned this in some other class, but like the cheapest computer paper that you find, because you don't care about it, right? So you just have like a stack of it. You take a few, you sketch. If it's bad, you remove it and you forget about it. And I think that's exactly the kind of work that I would recommend. This kind of repetition that is super important for learning the stuff that we're going to be talking about here, right? Because like it's a matter of practicing in this case.
Right. So you kind of mentioned you mentioned printer paper. We did have a question here about, let's see, scrolling up here. Oh, there's a lot of comments. But Kathy was asking, is this course only for digital drawing? What kind of tools would we need for this class? Can it be traditional? Can it be digital?
It could be. I mean, here it can be whatever you want. Absolutely. I mean, we do have a few assignments that have color, right? So I'm not like focusing on that, but to just do a little bit with color so that you can, and also, everyone has their own particular, tendency. Some person might remember the proportions a lot better than, let's say, color, tone, or any of that, right? So I wanted to kind of like, we can think of this as sort of introduction, like an introduction to working from imagination and the memory. So there is going to be the color component, which of course I think in this case is very easy. I think the easiest way to do it would be like an iPad or just on the computer or something. But I don't see why working in something like acrylic or gouache, which that's the one I'd recommend here because it's just a little bit more direct, easy. You can just focus on the color and also on some like either. And it can be done on anything, on cardboard, all like it, right? Like it's completely irrelevant. But everything else, a pencil and paper should pretty much be enough. If you want to do ink, that's cool too. This is quite medium agnostic in that sense.
Got it. So speaking of color, how is color and value treated in the curriculum? What significance does that have to drawing from imagination?
It's as important as anything else. I wanted to, like, obviously I would say that's not like the goal, but probably color is in this case less important than tone in the way that, or in the way that we're going to be talking about it. But we'll probably just do, I think I have here some copies of landscapes, right, to just establish large relationships, right? I'm not saying for us to come up with tiny color changes or like explore all of that, but it's good to remember a few key rules and to just get better at comparing values, which is if you think about it, a good thing that is something to think about, and I don't know if I covered in any of the courses, but what ends up happening in a lot of schools I see, like I go to I teach a class or whatever, and the thing that's often the case is there's a model in front, and then everyone is lined up around with their canvas pretty much right in front of them, and it's sort of like so that they can sort of step back and compare easily. So like if my hand is the canvas, right, like then you can just kind of see those relationships, see them side by side. This is not the way things are done in the academy, where the canvas is usually at an angle, so like I am the model, and here we have a canvas. So like even in that is in a way important enough, because you have to observe and you have a lot more time to now move your head and sketch on this canvas, right? Like it's increased the amount of time you have between just like a quick comparison to like, oh, I have to really hold on to that and put it on paper, and then turn my head and hold on to that again, right? So there are all these old assignments. I think it was Thomas Eakins, right, who did that, which we're going to sort of try to replicate. He did the thing where he put a model on the ground floor, I think, but the easels were on the floor above. So like the students had to go and like spend time only observing. They weren't allowed to sketch, and then they had to run upstairs and start the painting, and that's the time they had. So that's awesome, right? Like, so he's just like, something that we did practice was not simply turn the canvas, but turn it completely away, so that you would paint here and turn back around. And that all helps with just being able to keep something in your head for longer, like an image. And also, you will begin to sort of realize what is easier for you to remember. In my case, it's actually color, right? Like I can I can recall a scene based on the color of that scene. A lot more than like I don't see like if I imagine it, I don't see all the other elements as clearly as I do the color. But people are different, and all of it can be practiced as well.
Right. I guess as we're talking about these different techniques and ideas of being able to practice increasing your memory and things like that, for students who are just coming in now, wondering what we're talking about, could you just summarize, just based on one of these questions here, so just with this title of the course, what is the goal of the course? Like, is it to improve drawing? Like, if you could sum that up, what would you want students to take away from this?
In a way, this class is kind of like it's about teaching something really like kind of a core element of the entire practice. So even if we don't end up being able to sketch anything and everything out of our heads at any point in time, that's okay, because it's key to whatever artistic practice you have. If it involves sketching, or like if it involves the depiction of actual like objects or something that like obviously there isn't any need for this to the same degree for like a more contemporary artistic practice. I think, even though the color and thinking about color and remembering color, I think even at that point can be right, and that I think just sort of under like it gives you the idea of how important this will be, and how I think anybody who takes this class will see improvement. Which I know I shouldn't make this so hard for myself, right? Because now I promised that, but it's almost inevitable that you will, right? Like if you go through these exercises, right? Because it can't not.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. We have, I mean, I'm just looking at the comments here. Joseph is writing, would this class be recommended for those of us who are just breaking back into drawing and painting after a hiatus? And PR is asking, is there a prerequisite for being able to draw from imagination?
Well, I mean, the only prerequisite, if you're is having had this at least a certain amount of experience drawing from observation, right? I don't think we should begin drawing from. I mean, like, yeah, like that's important. That is absolutely important. That you've had a certain amount of that, practice, observing, comparing, all of that, proportions, blah blah, like all of that stuff. Like I don't think you can begin with specific like exercises that like the exercise that we're going to have without having that practice. However, if you're coming back to it after a while, I don't see any issues. And keep in mind, even here we're going to get that practice, right? So I would still recommend this for everybody, because a part of that practice is built in. But I feel like if you haven't ever drawn what's in front of you in a way that's like more or less accurate, I would say it's a tiny bit too early. However, it can still, get you on the path of understanding that like the goal is not to copy, the goal is to interpret.
Right. So I know you kind of mentioned this early on about the interpreting the subject, even when you're observing, using skills that you learn from drawing from imagination. But just more specifically, as far as real world application, how could we apply the skills that we learn from this course in the real world setting when we're creating our own artwork?
Yeah, you apply this Okay. Like, I think the actual techniques can be applied. Usually, when just giving you the freedom to make changes, sort of on the fly. I think this is the biggest help. That it just like, since everything is already like analysis and interpretation and some sort of composite of what you have in your head and what's in front of you, I think that you kind of begin to care more about the image that you're creating, and you will be open to making as many changes as you need. And the easiest way to start making those changes is to make them out of your head. So that's definitely a real world application. I mean, also, if anybody here is interested in, being a concept artist or any of that, it just allows you to do. It gives you that same ability, right, to just improvise. Improvise, explore, make changes, come up with just stuff that might be a bit absurd as well. Right? It kind of opens you up. And then there's the core of it, right? As I said, like this class is about sort of like kind of the core ideas of the practice, regardless of what the like applications of it are, almost. That it'll help you with all of it, regardless, in a more like abstract kind of a way, though.
Right. So Bird is asking, Ilya, would you be able to talk a little bit more about how drawing from imagination fit into the Repin Institute curriculum?
Well, I spoke about it, a tiny bit. I think it primarily had to do with how we composed images and how we sketched ideas, and also anatomy. Right, like that was a prime component. There is actually a great a story about Kramskoy and Repin. And Kramskoy was not like his teacher per se, but I think he gave him some advice from time to time. So when Repin asked him how to compose an image, the way that they would compose at the academy of the time that they would actually, it's actually a little bit more relatable in some ways. They would paint small people and paint a background and then move them around. And they would cut them out, right? And so they would move them on a piece of paper to establish the most interesting overlap of characters and all of them, and how the foreground characters interact with the environment, all this stuff. Which, of course, not as it's sort of it's kind of it creates a certain kind of image, right? But Kramskoy, who was much more of a realist, he gave the advice of essentially his advice was, you close your eyes and you imagine the image as clearly as possible, and you hold it in your head, right? Like the image that you have in mind, right? Like, people in a church, just some example, right? Like, so then, like, just imagine it as clearly as possible. Imagine every single detail, and then try to sketch it, and you'll see where you're off, and you see what you really recall or what you kind of just have an idea about. And I think that is just imagine it, bro. Yeah. Yes. So that I think is a great example. It creates a certain kind of imagery, but even it's just cool. It's just cool to be able to play around with that a bit.
That's interesting. Yeah, I missed the first part of that. I lost my audio, unfortunately. But what I did hear, it's exciting. I see a great question from Alex. Oh, please.
Mm-hmm. No, all good.
So great question here from Alex Neri. I want to know, Iliya, let's see, I would like your input on the importance of one's mental visual library and what are the best practices for building it throughout our career?
That's sort of the course. So that's sort of the class. So definitely
Take the class.
come by. Yeah, just take the, yes. We'll be doing it that way. Yeah. What's a good way of building it? I think this class in some ways can help establish that. I think you like as soon as you realize that you're improving in this particular aspect of the craft, then I think the rest of it becomes kind of easy. You just start to like accumulate imagery. I mean, there's the classic example of Kim Jung-ji, who is probably, you know, I don't know if you can learn to sketch like Kim Jung-ji. I mean, he practiced an enormous amount. I also think he, you know, it depends on what you have in there, and he had something unique that he was able to do all that. At the same time, I think he spoke about how he would just, you know, get a magazine with a bunch of, you know, cars in it and just sketch them. And he would sketch them and sketch them and sketch them until he could recreate them. That would be the, I mean, I don't know if you want to sketch that amount of cool cars or any of that, then that would be the path that you take. But I think the practices that we will cover in this class, you can apply to all of them as
well. Right. I'm just curious, Iliya, has the way that you look at real objects, when you look at things observationally now, to draw them observationally, after having practiced drawing from imagination so much, do you feel like you look at everything differently? Or is it something that only comes into play in a certain situation?
I think I sort of touched upon this. Like at a certain point, you don't know what's happening. Like you don't know if you're really observing it or you're just, or like there's a certain amount of analysis that has already become like so intuitive that you're like that's applied, right? Like it's sort of applied onto what you assume is in front of you, right? And that's a philosophical question in a way. But I think that there is, that happens, right? Like there is, I mean, I think I can probably look at an object and rotate it in my head as an example. So like, I think that's probably come from this kind of approach and practicing in that way, which I think I have as an exercise where, and this is kind of a classic exercise, and if it's not in there, I will put it into the outline that I have of just taking a look at an object, but sketching it from a different angle is an excellent thing to practice. So yes, stuff like that happens. I don't know. I don't like, because all of these skills are acquired over like a longer period of time. I don't know at what moment that happened. I mean, I can look at those old like sketchbooks and see some awful skulls that I drew from imagination. So it clearly had not happened at that time yet. But yeah.
Okay, well, that's fascinating. I think that's pretty much all of my questions. If anyone here has more questions, feel free to write them in really quickly. We have a few minutes.
Yes, please.
So yeah, I am interested, just while we're waiting for that, Iliya. You did mention that you bring around those notebooks with you and you draw skulls from imagination. Do you find yourself drawing more since you, as opposed to having to go out and find reference and draw things from life? Do you find that it helps from a mileage perspective? Do you find that you're drawing more often when you have that notebook with you and you can just draw things from your memory or from your imagination?
I think it's considerably easier, yeah, because it's just like you can do it anywhere. All you need is that sketchbook and like a pen. So you absolutely can sketch all the time in that way. I mean, you can also sketch all the time with everything around you, right? But then, like, as long, and I feel like only a certain kind of practice can get a bit tedious. So if that is the goal, then I would combine all this, sketch the things around you, repeat them from imagination or from a memory, come up with do a variation on that object. Now sort of adding other elements. It's also a great way to practice perspective as well, because then you're practicing it, and I mean just like a more intuitive approach to perspective. Not the grid thing, but simply to sketch some element in perspective and see if you intuited that perspective. Yeah, yeah. It is. Oh, look at that! I love that image of me that popped up, which I like a lot. In the blue shirt, it's quite nice.
That's great.
Yes.
I made that.
You did? That's great. Oh no, there's more. There's more. I don't want to. Okay, I'm done. I'm done looking at this. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that one for a while. Iliya the Builder. Okay. Well, yeah, I expect that more of them will come through. So yeah, questions. Hippie Chick is asking, would this be a good course to develop your own style and artistic voice?
I don't think there'll be like an emphasis on this here, but I can see it helping. Right? I can see it helping because I often, it's often the challenges, and I have this. The challenge is to get away from what's like in front of you. It controls you a lot more, and you see how much it. In this class, you'll see how, like, especially anybody with a traditional practice, you end up being, yeah, like you can't like allow yourself to interpret. Like it becomes that kind of an issue, right? Like it's like you want to be as accurate as possible, so it's like I could make an adjustment or exaggerate something and it'll probably improve that image that I'm making, but I have to be sort of honest, and I think this kind of practice allows you to not be as much of be more in control of the imagery that you want to create, which obviously is going to help with your own ideas and your own personal technique.
Yeah, that makes sense. Evan is asking, what will the workload look like for this class? Is it going to be a really heavy assignment workload?
Their assignments, I don't know. There are some people who refuse to take my classes in the past because of the amount of like homework I gave, which seems like, I don't know. I don't think it's that much. I think, I don't know, maybe a couple hours. The thing about these assignments is that you can they're very repetitive. So there's like a specific assignment every class, which I imagine, should take about an hour. But you can go ahead and make that 8 hours easily, right? Like it's just the practice. So that's up to you here, right? Like if you can do it an hour a day, you can do it only that 1 hour if that's all you have, right? Like I totally understand that too. I can't imagine like it'll kill you. Like, it's more of like we're covering a topic in class and then you get to practice it at home. And it's not even about the practice while you're taking this class. It's about like how you take this practice and like and how it becomes your own practice.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let's see. Darina is asking, is the course structured for a specific topic each week, or will we be doing a more finished artwork across multiple weeks?
Only at the end is some imagery that probably will take a little bit longer. Only at the end. Everything else, like everything, is a topic, a specific topic with overlap, or like a topic might still be the same topic, but then like just like a new take or something a bit more complex. But overall, only at the end will there be an approach to creating an image from sort of a combination of observation and imagination. Yeah. So, and I think this is still sort of an introductory class in which I didn't, like I think I didn't think it would be possible. I wanted to include a little bit of it, but I didn't think it would be possible to jump right into, doing a whole scene entirely.
Right.
That seems.
Yeah, and we're covering 8 weeks in this class as well.
For sure, it's a nice and long.
So
cool.
A question from Dylan is, what is your favorite subject to draw from memory and imagination, if you have one, and what aspects about it make it special?
Oh no, I can't answer that. No, it's one of those. I'll start going off on some crazy tangent. I mean, if I'm not thinking that much, then it's probably heads, like different characters, and then you move on with them, and you get like the if I'm going to be honest, it's probably heads. That's if I'm not thinking about anything, right? Like if I simply just have a piece of paper and I just start, coming up with, people. That's probably, yeah. I don't know if that's my favorite subject, but that's the one I do more often.
So Deb is asking, I don't have a lot of experience in portraits and anatomy. Is that going to be a problem in this class?
It will not be a problem in this class to not have any, to not have as much experience with portraiture or anatomy. There will be a week on kind of an introduction to like constructive anatomy, which of course my recorded courses are there that cover all this in detail. However, here we just have a single class on like how we can approach constructive anatomy with the techniques that I have come up with, or am going to be explaining. So in a way, it could be very helpful for people who are taking the course, the recorded course.
Right. So yeah, we still have a few questions coming in just about prerequisites for this class, and from what I gather, it's really just you would like students to have some experience drawing from observation, but there's nothing specific that they need to have, or is there something specific that they need to have done in your mind?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I think having that experience will be quite helpful. That's not to say the class cannot also, give you, a certain skill set if you don't have this, because there are parts of that are covered here. But the reason we have prerequisites is so that you don't hit a wall, so that you can keep being motivated, right? It's not to prevent anyone from doing the thing. It's just if you don't have that experience, some of the things we're talking about might be like a little too hard, and that is always like, if you're the kind of person who's cool with that, that's great. But that can get that's hard to overcome at times.
Right. So Julie's just asking if we've completed the fundamentals of observational drawing, which was the previous live class that you taught, which is now part of the interactive course track. Would that be enough to jump into this class?
I think so. Yeah, I absolutely think so. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's just take one or two more.
Sure.
Manuel is asking, will we be doing any research for our imagination drawings during the class?
Yes, at the end, a tiny bit.
Okay, I'm excited
I'm
about
not
that.
gonna spoil that one, but yeah, but like there's like the goal at the end is to come up with some compositional sketches. So for that, I'm not going to make you do them from imagination per se, but like half from imagination. And for that, you would obviously have to go and not only come up with some ideas, but gather imagery and that you're going to need eventually.
Okay. I see one more question here from Ross. It's a funny one. For those of us who are masochists when it comes to craft, Iliya, do you have any suggestions for exercises that are punishing and painful but equally rewarding?
I think as punishing and painful but equally rewarding. Oh my god, hold on. I think some of the ones we're going to have here are probably going to be pretty. If you're not experienced with this, they might be a little painful, but they are very rewarding. The one that I enjoyed in classes was to have the model move around the room very, very slowly, and people would sketch as they moved. I think that one, from what I heard from the students, was extremely painful, but also extremely rewarding. Mm-hmm. So if you can make that happen, that would be awesome.
Right. So would it kind of be in a sense, it can be as difficult as you want to make it. Like you can make some of these exercises a little bit easier for yourself if you're not feeling confident enough, or you could make them as difficult as they could possibly be.
Yes. If you follow along in the way that I planned this, it just gets incrementally harder and harder. Obviously, when there's probably going to be the increments aren't all even. In some cases, the gap might if we move from some simple objects to like a head, that increment does not exist here to that extent. But that's a harder so. But you can simplify that head, or just make more complicated objects, right? Like there are ways that you yourself will be able to bridge the gap, right? Because it's everything and anything. Like you can sketch anything and everything, and just increase how complex that should be. That's kind of awesome.
That's really awesome. That makes me think that there'll be a lot of us who will want to come back to this later. Well, I'm sure the goal is not to do this in isolation and then forget about it, but to maybe integrate some of these practices into our wider practice in a sense. As a lifestyle choice.
Yes, that's why I was away for a year. I'm now a lifestyle coach. In this sense, but I absolutely. I absolutely think that is. It's possible to do all the exercises and then, I guess, not apply this, but I'm not sure that that's even possible. If you do these exercises, it'll automatically, absorb and alter the way that you do all the other assignments you have.
Well, I, for one, am super excited to have my entire thinking changed forever. So sign up for this class.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I've oversold this. I think I'm getting a little worried. I mean, it's good to do. It's going to be a good class. I think you learn a lot. That's all I'm saying. You know, I feel like I did sort of like I promised a lot here. So hopefully I'll deliver as best I can. I'll do my best.
No, I think it's I know what you're saying, but I think it is really interesting, and it's also unique. It's a unique thing to be focusing on. I think when you could be focusing on all of these different, life drawings and cast drawings and perspective and construction and anatomy and all these things, but it seems like the more you know, the better. And then this is a unique way of taking all of that and thinking about it in a different way.
Yeah.
Which can only help.
100%. Yes. The one thing, yes, agreed. The one thing I will promise is that if you do these exercises, they will not hurt your technique. They will only add or not do anything. I'll lay that out. Or they'll be useless, but they will not hurt you. That's what I can promise.
No, it's great.
One way to end this, I think
you can't leave them with that, Iliya.
I know. No. I'm super excited about this class because in a way I have thought about teaching something of the kind for a very long time, and I'm glad it's finally happening. And it was just like the right time to do this.
Right.
So yeah, I was always this and. Yeah, even I think at one point I was actually talking with Joshua about something of the kind as well a long time ago, of just what would be an approach and all of that. So I think this will be great in that respect, right? I think it is unique, and excited to have you guys there.
Absolutely. So guys, it starts on Saturdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time on October the 14th. So not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday. So make sure that you sign up at live.anime.art. You don't want to miss this one. It's a rare and exciting opportunity to get Iliya in for a live class. So I for one am extremely excited about this class. It's something different. It's exciting. I want to apply it to my own work. I'm sure that you guys do as well. So yeah, thank you so much, Iliya. This was really enlightening.
Thank you.
Cannot wait to see you on Saturday.
Yes, I'm very excited I'll be on my old computer, so I won't look the way I do here. But yeah, I think it'll be awesome. I'm very excited to have everyone here and hopefully in the class. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, guys. I'll see you all on the 14th of October. Okay.
14th.